Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Ma ba'd, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Ilyas Abdul Haq Burnett. 5.5 years ago or so, I was known as Elliot Edward Burnett. SubhanAllah. I like to begin usually with just a brief on a background. My mum is English and my dad is from Guyana. Do any of you know where Guyana is? Okay. Guyana is just above Brazil, between Suriname and Venezuela, but it's not like other Latin American countries. You know, it's considered the West Indies, so you have blacks there, Indians and Vietnamese people. My father is obviously from the black side, yeah? And growing up, should I introduce you or do you want to introduce yourself? Don't mind. Introduce yourself. This is my brother Jibreel. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah. So, obviously, as you can tell, we're twins, yeah? And we grew up with our father. And funnily enough, our grandparents, neither of them were religious. Not from my dad's side, not from my mum's side. And this is quite rare. Actually, that generation were usually people who declared a faith even if they didn't go to church or anything, but our grandparents didn't declare any faith at all. And so our parents didn't have any faith of their own. Growing up, we never spoke about God, we were never taught about God. The closest we ever got to anything like that was nature documentaries, at least for myself. You know, growing up, I loved watching nature documentaries, really. Just amazed me, the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I guess this was my kind of insight into the greatness of Allah. So, having no religious influence at all, I grew up believing that religion in itself was a very strange concept to me. Whoever's phone that is, inshallah, put your phones on silent, inshallah ta'ala, please, jazakallah khair. Yeah, religion was a strange concept to me. Growing up again, looking at the creation, I believed in the Creator. Have any of you seen our talk on Roadside to Islam? Show of hands. Assalamu alaikum, by the way. Yeah, alhamdulillah. Yeah. Well, you know that Abu Bakr put atheists accept Islam or whatever. We weren't atheists. Yeah? I don't even believe in atheism. I don't believe in atheism. We were agnostic. We were people who believed in the Creator, but we didn't believe in religion. Yeah? So, I remember, I probably had a few encounters like this when I got like a bad letter from school or something, where I'm like praying to God or to Allah not to let that letter reach home or whatever. But I remember me and my brother, we went down to the park and we were just chilling, and there was a young boy. I was about 10 at the time, and the boy was about 6 years old. And you know, he had behavioural issues. I know that now. He definitely had behavioural issues because I was a stranger to him, and he was kicking me and just cussing me out. And this guy didn't even know me. Didn't even know who I was. But his sister said that he was a cancer patient, which is a lie. I don't believe that this was true. The boy was very young, to be a cancer patient. But she must have said this so that I would show some kind of mercy towards him, because he does have behavioural issues and he probably doesn't go out much. So he pushed it a bit too far, and I slapped him. And he obviously started crying because he was a young boy. And I felt bad because his sister and her friends turned on me, and everybody's telling me I'm a bully, and they were saying this, that, and the other. So I left in tears. And as I was making my way up to exit the park, I remember, subhanallah, I remember getting on my knees. I got on my knees and I made istighfar, I made tawbah. I remember asking God, at the time I would have said God, I remember asking him to forgive me for harming the boy and for upsetting his sister. And then I left. It's really strange when I think about it now. But I did do that, and I have a strong recollection of that. I always ask my brother, do you remember seeing me do that? He says, I don't know, but I remember it very, very well. So anyway, I know it's late, and after Isha, the Sunnah is everybody to go home and rest so they can make the Fajr Salah, so I'm going to keep this quite short. I'm going to jump to straight when I was 17. When I was 17, I was seeing somebody whose father was a Muslim, but his wife wasn't, and the children grew up non-Muslim. And I was seeing her, and I was at her house, and her father brought me into the kitchen to speak to him about, he wanted to talk to me anyway, and he spoke to me about Islam. And I just remember the emotions I felt when he was telling me about this deen. Because, like I said, religion was a strange concept to me. Christianity was something from afar. I could never understand the belief concept of Christianity. It always confused me. Jesus, God, they're the same, but then Jesus is Jesus, you've even titled him Jesus, and then God is God, you've titled him God, and then they're just, I always imagine God as the creator, but it was just very confusing. And he told me about a religion whereby the person worships God alone, the creator. He sends prophets and messengers to guide mankind. That made sense to me, because if somebody's going to show you how to worship God, it has to be a human being, right? It has to be somebody, right? Otherwise everybody will be making up their own ways. Told me about the Holy Scriptures, told me about Jesus and that we believe in him, etc. But that he's a prophet. He's not the son of Allah. That made sense to me too. So I was blown away thinking, wow, there's actually a religion that I can actually relate to. That just shocked me. Because everything that he was saying to me, my heart was affirming it. Every single thing he would say, my heart was saying, yeah, I agree with that. That makes sense. That makes sense. And that was really strange to me. And yeah. So I remember leaving that night, and the best way to put it was like it was a seed that was planted in the earth. That one conversation he had with me, and then from that one conversation, whenever I'd meet Muslims throughout my work or whatever, I'd always ask them about Islam, just to try and get a little something. It's the same kind of feeling I got when he spoke to me about it. And it got to the point where I met somebody called Pasha, a good friend of mine, non-practicing Muslim, and he taught me wudu, taught me assalamu alaikum. He showed me the film The Message. You've all seen the film The Message, you've probably heard of it. Yeah, it's a decent film, it's not bad. I remember we was chilling, and he said, you were watching it, and I said, I hadn't even become a Muslim yet, yeah? It's like, I wish I could have been Ali, and I could have been in the bed while the Messenger of Allah escaped to make his hijrah. SubhanAllah, I wasn't even Muslim yet, and I said I wanted to be Ali so the Messenger of Allah could escape. So it's like the love for Islam is definitely entering my heart bit by bit. And then I was with my mum, and I told her that I want to read the Quran. Randomly. I don't often open up to my mum like that. Yeah, like if she asks me a question, I'll answer it and I'll talk to her a little bit, but I don't usually open up to her about my personal issues. But this time I just felt compelled to just tell her. Maybe because my brother wasn't there. It was just me and my mum that time. And she said, go into that cupboard there, I've got one. My mum, non-Muslim, not Christian, nothing. She has a Quran. Allah knows how long she had it for. So I was like, Mum, you understand what I'm asking for is a Quran, yeah? The Quran. She's like, yeah, I've got one. I was like, alright, cool, where is it? She said, it's in that cupboard there. So I looked in, and sure enough, she has a Quran. So I asked her if I can take it. She says, yes, you can have it, but you have to, respect it, don't lose it, this, that, and the other. It was given to me by one of her ex-boyfriend's friends, yeah? Because apparently her ex-boyfriend was a Muslim. He's off the deen now, may Allah guide him. But anyway, so I took that Quran, the interpretation in English, and I just read it, bit by bit, step by step, gradual process. And sometimes I leave it alone, sometimes I read a page, sometimes 3. But the thing that amazed me the most was how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends verses in the Quran with his names and qualities. For example, وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ وَهُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. When I think of God, I believe in him having these qualities. He is the Almighty. He is the All-Seeing. He is the All-Knowing. So to read in a book that this person, or he's telling me who he is, and these are qualities that no man can have. No man can be all-seeing. So he's like telling me, he's like showing me, like, Ilyas, I am who you envisioned I'd always be. And that really touched me. He's telling me he's almighty, he's telling me he's the all-knowing, he's the all-wise. And then I'm looking at these verses and he's talking about, because I started from Baqarah, So from not even being a Muslim and looking into the deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks a lot about the munafiqeen. He talks about those who claim to have faith, but they don't really have faith. So for me being in the middle path where I'm not sure, my iman isn't certified yet, I'm looking into the religion, I'm hearing about these munafiqeen, I'm thinking, is that me? Am I that munafiq? It's just like, saying I believe, but then I don't believe none. I kept on reading. And then in that, I got a lot of historical lessons as well, because I was always aware of Christianity, and I was always aware of the falsehood in it. Judaism I was always very much a stranger to, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks and teaches me about how the Christians deviated. And that was amazing as well, because I'm being shown that this religion is true, and as much as we acknowledge Christianity, it exists, it's there, it's present, we have many churches in this country, we have many people who believe in Christianity, but I never believed in it, and Allah is showing me the falsehood inside of it as well. And it's all making sense. And then he speaks about the creation, about how we, created all of these things for our benefit. And there's just nothing you can deny about it. When you look in, I advise each and every single one of you to read the interpretation of the Quran in a language you understand. If you don't have Lughatul al-Arabiyyah, if you don't have Arabic, read the Quran in a language that you understand, because you'll take a lot of great benefit from it. The Quran in its English, the interpretation of the Quran was enough for me to accept the religion, because reading the Quran is what ultimately led me to taking my Shahada. So even the interpretation in itself is strong and like no other thing. So it got to the point where I think I'd gotten into a couple of pages into Ali Imran, and I was just... Honestly, brothers, Islam is something you either accept it or you reject it. But there's no doubting in it. There's no doubting in it. If you read the interpretation of the Quran, you get a little bit of Islamic knowledge, you can't deny the truth in it. The only thing you can do is reject it or accept it. It's really that simple. Some people might reject it because they have a partner who they fear they'd lose if they accepted Islam. Other people, they fear maybe their parents' reaction or how society will view them. Or there's types of kufr. There's kufr of pride, there's kufr of arrogance, there's kufr of doubt, etc. Well, more often than not, people that have been exposed to Islam as it is, it's usually kufr of arrogance and pride. So alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened my heart not to be proud, not to be afraid of the changes that I'd make in my life, because I was actually looking forward to changing my life. I knew I needed it. I was looking forward to a change. So I spoke to a friend of mine, he advised me to go to this masjid, to a masjid to take my shahada. I remember, when you walk into a building, you never look down, you never really think to look down. So I had my trainers on, and the first thing I did was just walked into the masjid with my trainers on. And there was like 3 uncles stood by a pillar, they're like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? I was like, what? I was like, you're in the masjid? So I'm like, yeah. They're like, there's carpet in here. And then I looked down and I noticed they ain't got shoes on, they're barefoot, they got socks on. So I'm like, okay, cool, sorry about that, sorry. So I took my shoes, I put them down, I sat in a corner, they said, what are you here for? I said, I want to take my shahada. I said, okay. So who do you want to see? I said, you should see the imam. One of the brothers said, I said, okay, cool, just wait here for a moment. So they went to speak to the imam. I went into the office, he asked me a little bit about the religion, and that made me nervous. He said, why do you want to be Muslim? That made me nervous, because I knew I wanted to be a Muslim, yeah? But he was testing, like, why? Like, my Islamic knowledge, so to speak. So it made me a little bit nervous, actually, because I didn't know anything about the message of Allah. I just knew that Islam was a true religion. I looked into the Quran, I read, Baqarah and a little bit of Ali Imran. I was just new. I didn't really know how to answer him. I was just like, I know this is the true religion. I believe that God is one, and this is why I want to accept Islam. He said, what's your name? I said, my name's Elliot. He said, you should take the name Ilyas. I was like, it's funny you said that, because a couple of days ago, there's a guy in my area I speak to. I told him I was looking into Islam. He asked me what my name was. And he said, I should take the name Ilyas too. So there's only 2 people before I accepted Islam who advised me to take a name, and both of them said one of the rarest names that I used. Alhamdulillah, Nabi Ilyas alayhi salam. So that was it. Took my shahada. From that point on, I never looked back. I really progressed a lot in the deen when I took my shahada. I remember one of the first ones I got was the Moroccan thobe. I was going all out. All out. I had a picky afro and cut my hair. My beard was coming through bit by bit. And
don't forget the socks and sandals, bro.
Yeah,
socks and sandals.
I was gonna leave that one out. Yeah, socks and sandals. I was going in. I remember like my second Jummah, I came downstairs from my block, and my Jamaican neighbour who lives on the other side, his little boy was there, and he said, "Look, Daddy, it's Jesus." It's Jesus. And I was like, no, not Jesus. SubhanAllah. My face must have been glowing then. Nowadays people tell me I look tired. That's what I was telling my brother. When too much, man, too much. I miss those days, you know, when I was so full of zeal and so devoted. SubhanAllah. At the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed me with much khair since accepting Islam. I've travelled to Misr. I went to Egypt for 1.5 years. I studied Arabic for a little while. And that was a great experience for me. You know, I've memorized portions of the Quran. I even teach tajweed as well, alhamdulillah. I progressed a lot when I came into the deen. And if I was going to give anybody an advice, I would just say to remember death often. I actually tweeted recently, if anybody wants to follow me on Twitter, you can @Poetry for Islam, Poetry for Islam, or @Ilyas Burnett, that's ILIYAS. But I tweeted recently, I just said, what did I say? I said, like, too many of us are playing the role of fitna in one another's lives. Like, as brothers and sisters, we should support one another. And I just, like too many of us are playing the role of fitna in people's lives, man. We need to just leave people alone. If we don't have any khair with somebody, if we don't have no intention of goodness, just let that individual be. Just put them to the side, man. Let them get on with their lives, and you focus on what you need to focus on. Don't drag somebody down with you. Don't try and invite another Muslim into haram, because I was thinking that, you know, imagine like you get into haram with a sister, for example, yeah? And then, like, at some point in your life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you the tawfiq to make a sincere tawbah. A sincere tawbah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives that sin. But then on the day of judgment, you find that sister and you see her being thrown into the hellfire because of an action you coerced her into, you encouraged her into, because she didn't make the tawbah. Allah gave you the benefit to make the tawbah, but you brought her into an action that caused her to fall into the hellfire. So what I'm saying is, as brothers and sisters, we just need to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remember death often, and don't be in one another's lives unless we're calling one another to goodness. And alhamdulillah, this is my story. It's kept it very blunt, very short. But ultimately, the praise and the thanks is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guiding me and for guiding my brother. For surely, those who Allah has chosen to be left in misguidance, none can guide them. And truly, whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses to guide, then that person will be guided for sure, without doubt. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us on the straight path. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us meet Him in the best state. Allahumma ameen, in sujood, fasting, on the way to the masjid, in the masjid. Just any state of khair, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take us in it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Jibreel. Was due to the assistance of my brother Ilyas. Alhamdulillah, Allah uses His slaves however He wills. And it's very interesting when I listen to my brother's story, because he freestyles and I freestyle. We don't write or prepare anything. So normally when I listen to him, I learn something new, or he tells his story from another perspective. But I just find it very interesting how Allah's mercy and His qadr is that He can guide people from a haram circumstance. Like a circumstance that is not of any khair at all in any way, shape or form. And Allah turns that from His mercy into goodness. Alhamdulillah, Allah is great. So I lived in a hostel when I was 16 years old. I have a good relationship with my family, with my mum and my dad. However, with my dad we would have ups and downs, and I'd get kicked out very often. Same as my brother as well, actually. He had his own place at 17, and I moved into the hostel when I was like 16. But I remember speaking to these two girls in the hostel, and we was discussing faith, we was discussing religion, and they had become born-again Christians. And we was discussing
God and the devil, etc. And what they had to say really affected me in terms of just recognising God. We didn't speak so much so about Jesus and is he God or is he not God? Is he God or was he sent by God? But just at the time I felt perhaps that I needed God in my life. I always recognised that there was one creator. And at that instance, during that conversation, I decided that I would become a Christian. However, if a Christian was watching this, then they would probably say that I wasn't a Christian because I never believed that Jesus was the Son of God or God himself. In fact, actually, before I accepted Islam, before I knew anything about Tawheed, I would be trying to pray, and in the way that Christians teach you to pray is that you say, in Jesus' name we pray. Sort of look at him as like an intercessor, like a mediator, an intermediary between you and Allah. Because in the Bible it says,
the only way into God is through me, something like that.
Yeah. I am the way, the truth, and the light, and nobody shall come to the Father except through me. So they kind of, because of that verse, they consider that they have to go through Jesus in order to get to God. But I would remember making a prayer, which was more like a dua, in my room, and getting to that last point in the prayer where I'm supposed to say, in Jesus' name we pray. But like a sense of fear would overcome me. Like, I feel like I'm speaking to God. I feel like I'm speaking to the Creator, the All-Hearer, the All-Seer, and Mujib, the swift in response. So, why am I saying in Jesus' name? And I was very concerned as to whether or not my salah or my dua would be accepted, because I would consciously leave that part out. My fitrah, my natural disposition allowed me to recognise that Allah is one and I can speak to him directly, and I don't need to have any intermediary between me and him. Like the Catholics, it's a strange thing. Me and Ilyas were speaking about it the other day. An individual will go into a box while a man sits next to him and confesses his sins. And a man confessing his sins to a sinner and expecting that sinner to be able to forgive him for his sins. As if this individual is Al-Ghafur Rahim, like he is At-Tawwab. It just doesn't make any sense. So this lifestyle of Christianity was on me for about 2 weeks. Due to the nature of how that religion works, it doesn't really become a part of your life. You go to church on Sunday, and really and truly from Monday to Saturday, you're just kind of doing whatever you want, really and truly. And I don't think that there's a lot of wisdom in this. I don't think it's sustainable, and I think that's why today a lot of the churches are empty. I know the masajid are full. And Christianity has got to the state that it's in, just because of the fact that it's not really a lifestyle. So after 2 weeks I left it. I was like, that just doesn't really make any sense. I don't understand who you guys think Jesus is or why you think Jesus is that. I do remember coming across a very interesting verse in the Bible though, which I'll mention now, where it says that, and he, Jesus, went a little further and fell on his face, praying, saying, "Oh my Father, let this trial pass from me, not as I will, but as you will." So firstly, it's important to recognise that Isa alayhi salam would make sujood like the Muslims make sujood. He wouldn't be standing and clapping and singing and hollering. He would make sujood in humility to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like the Muslims do. Rather, the Muslims love Jesus alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, more than the Christians do in reality. And another interesting verse in the Bible as well, which is amazing. I don't think a lot of you guys will be aware of this. The only reason I know is because I set up a dawah project with Rafiq and Naeem and some of the brothers from Tottenham Seven Sisters, and in doing that we had regular meetings once a week where we learned and studied different verses from the Bible or how to tackle atheists and scientists. And I came across a very interesting verse, subhanAllah, you won't believe it, but it says in the Bible, in chapter 29 verse 12 in Isaiah, "The book will be revealed to him who is not learned, saying, 'Read this, I pray thee,' and he will say, 'I am not learned.'" SubhanAllah, who knew that? Who knew that was in the Bible? Amazing, SubhanAllah, because we know from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam that he was not learned, he couldn't read or write. And the angel Jibreel alayhi salam came and said, "Iqra, read." And he said, "Ma ana biqari." the perfection in the Prophet's character, subhanAllah, even that he would have the honesty to say that I can't read. He was not like a proud man, subhanAllah, he was amazing. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And then the angel Jibreel held him tightly again and said, Iqra, read. And he said, Ma ana bi qari. So he fulfills that prophecy. The book will be revealed to him who is not learned, saying, read this, I pray thee, and he will say, I am not learned. If that's not dawah for a Christian, subhanAllah, I don't know what is. But alhamdulillah, they pick and choose what they want. Or they say you got it in the wrong context. Alhamdulillah. It's like Ilyas said, you either accept it or you reject it, but you cannot deny Islam. I love that, mashallah. That's very true. Very, very true. So, after this 2 weeks of trying to be a Christian, I let that go because it didn't appeal to my fitrah and it was not sustainable. And I came back on my 21st birthday. I was celebrating in Manchester with a few friends. I came back to my mum's, as was our sunnah. We would, on a Sunday, we would always go to our mum's because it was my dad that raised me and my brother as a single parent. And I see Ilyas roll in, afro, beard, the Moroccan thobe, the sandals and the socks. I'm thinking, because me and my brother have a strange relationship, we're very close. We're closer now, but back then we was a bit, I don't know, we would go for quite some time not seeing each other, am I right?
Yeah, we went to, like our dad wanted us to go to different schools from year 5. So from the last year of primary school, my brother was in a different school. And then through secondary, we were at different secondary schools and college as well.
And listen, don't hijack my talk, yeah?
So yeah.
Alhamdulillah, I'm just joking, man. But it's true. My dad did want us to have separate identities. So he's from year 5. I think me and him was getting into too much trouble together as well, really and truly. We was like public enemy number 1. We used to terrorise people in school and get terrorised for it. So yeah, secondary school was completely different, had completely different friends, completely different identities. Yeah, but we were still very close. So he comes into my mum's, I see him looking very strange to me. So I'm like, what's going on? And he says, you know what, he's a Muslim. I didn't know what a Muslim really was or what Islam really was. And this is where the journey really began. And he took a very, do you know what? Allah blessed him, subhanAllah, because I would hurl some very, very difficult, controversial questions at him. Why is it that Muslim men can marry more than one wife? Do you really believe that Adam and Eve were the first of creation? SubhanAllah, at the time I remember the conviction, the certainty I had that was not a reality. It was crazy, it was so real to me. And when he said, yes, I do believe that, I thought it was crazy. But now, I believe in, with absolute yaqeen, absolute certainty that Adam and Hawa were the first of creation. And this is from the rahmah of Allah. But in any case, he would answer these questions in a very, very good way. In a way that was clinical, in a way that was, he didn't stutter, he was very direct, he was very straight. And because we was in a debate, and because I was jahil, I would pretend like his points didn't make sense, or I'd pretend like that didn't affect me, but his answers really did make sense. Islam made sense. Or at least in those controversial topics it made sense. So what he would do is I'd be chilling in my flat, listening to music, and then I'd get a message saying, I'll listen to Murtada Khan, Deceptions of Shaitan, for example. And I would listen to it. So I'd put the music on pause, I would open up the Murtada Khan talk, and I would start listening. If it doesn't catch my interest in the first 5 minutes, I might pause the video and then go back to the music video that I was just watching. But then there's such a huge contrast between the two. Even if it didn't gauge your interest quickly, you're going from listening to something about Allah and Islam, which is a pure thing, and Shaitan, and then you go to a music video and you're seeing all sorts of indecency on there. Something, it kind of tells your heart that something's not right here. So I would actually close the video and force myself to listen to this talk. And I enjoyed them, I loved them. Sayyid Raga's talk on the descriptions of paradise was a beautiful talk, Ahmed Dida. And slowly but surely, I was able to gain an understanding of how Shaitan works, even though I wasn't a Muslim. I was able to gain an understanding of Islam. And it's like I heard Mufti Menk say the other day, that you can't, what's not to like about Islam, really and truly? Where's the risk element in it? Where's the risk element in worshipping Allah alone? There's no risk. How can somebody say that's wrong for worshipping the Creator? But there's risk involved when you start worshipping man, someone who gets tired, someone who sleeps, someone who supposedly died, and you say it's God. There's a danger in worshipping stones. You know, there's a danger in all of these things. In atheism. So let's say, for example, an atheist might say, well, don't you worry that there is no God, and that when you die, all of your withholding from your desires was a waste of time. Yeah? And I'll say, okay, let's say, for example, that was a possibility. We know it's not, but let's say it's a possibility. So I lived my life happy and content because I believed with absolute certainty that I was doing the right thing. I abstained from certain false attractions, and I lived a life of contentment, because that's what Islam gives you. Even though we give up a lot of haram, you know, we feel a sense of contentment being Muslims, right? Definitely, 100% we do, because only in the remembrance of Allah do the hearts find peace. Allah is as-salam, He is the owner of peace. So you cannot attain peace, true peace, without worshipping the owner of peace. So, fair enough, I live my life contentfully, and at the end I just die and worms eat me, as my sister used to say, and that's it, nothing after that. But let's say you're wrong. Let's say if you're wrong, and there is a God, and there is a Yawm al-Qiyamah, what's going to happen for you? It's peak. So we're in a win-win situation. So these talks, I loved them, I benefited from them. There was 2 girls that I was seeing at the time as well, and I told one of them that I was looking to accept Islam, and she was like, "You're going to grow your beard?" That was the first question she asked me, subhanAllah. "Are you going to grow your beard?" And I was like, I'm not sure, I heard it's not an obligation, this, that and the third. And then my brother played an interesting trick on me. He said to me that the Imam has invited you to the masjid, so he made it sound extremely personal that the Imam has specifically asked for me.
You keep saying that. The Imam knew I was a twin, and it was a community day, and the Imam said, make sure your brother comes. It's true, honestly. He wanted you to come.
Alhamdulillah, I had an invitation to come to the masjid.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. You and mum.
And because of watching Murtaza Khan's talk on the deceptions of shaitan, I had certainty that something was going to try and prevent me from attending this talk. To this masjid, to listen to this talk. And that increased me in certainty that yes, definitely, I think that this is the true religion. So I said, alhamdulillah, I'm going to go. So I went to Lewisham, I listened to many brothers speaking to me, giving me dawah, etc. And one of them said something which you might think is trivial, but for me, it really struck a chord. He said, because I asked him about the beard, right? Because I was interested in this, and I asked him if it was wajib, like if I had to have it. And he said, imagine if you saw a lion in a safari and it had no mane. Wouldn't it look like a lioness? And then I stopped and I was like, damn, you're right. It would look like a lioness. And then from that moment on, I was like, okay, alhamdulillah, if I accept Islam, I'm definitely growing a beard. 100%, 100%. We don't believe in zodiac signs, but I'm a Leo as well. So being a lion, you know, it really got me excited about that and making me feel like I want to implement that sunnah, alhamdulillah. But I had certainty that Islam was true, but I didn't want to get caught up in the emotions. You know, like you're having loads of brothers speaking to you, you're feeling away, and you're like, you know what, my brother was on my case as well, take your shahada, you know, you believe it's the truth, take your shahada. And I was like, you know what, let me see how I feel in the morning. If I feel the same way, if I still feel that same conviction in the morning, then I'll definitely come to the masjid and take my shahada. Because you know how it is, you know when you go to a talk, an Islamic lecture, and subhanAllah, the Imam or the Shaykh has really got you feeling like on top of the world, subhanAllah, you're going to do this and you're going to do that, and then you wake up in the morning and the feeling's just gone, like that. And you're back to your old ways. All those things you thought you was going to do, you don't do them. So I thought perhaps maybe this is the case with me. I'm feeling like, yes, I'm ready to do this, and then I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I made a mistake. So alhamdulillah, I was able to wrestle away from the circle of brothers around me telling me to take my shahada, because there was literally like a circle of brothers like, take your shahada. I was like, nah. If I feel the same way in the morning, I'm coming to the masjid. Alhamdulillah, Allah gave me life. Because really, there was no guarantee I was going to make it up the next morning. And this is why they were so on me to take my shahada, and I understand that, of course. But I woke up in the morning with the same conviction. I went to the Lewisham Islamic Centre, and I took my shahada. Alhamdulillah, I accepted Islam. And, you know, like Ilya said, you know, we never looked back. You know, ever since I learned how to pray 5 times a day, you have to make it part of your lifestyle. You just have to, because people build up habits in their life. If we're late, you build a habit of being late, you'll always be late. You know, if you're someone who likes to stay fit, you make gym part of your lifestyle and it becomes easy. Same for a Muslim. You make salah 5 times a day part of your lifestyle. If I'm going to do something or I've got a day ahead of me, in your mind you calculate when your prayer is and you just know. It's just part of your lifestyle. So my advice for the brothers is, especially for new Muslims as well, because brothers who have been Muslims for a long time and practicing, alhamdulillah, I'm sure they don't struggle with these things, but for people who are new to the deen or might be struggling to pray 5 times a day, you have to be conscious of the fact that if you know Islam is a reality, then you know that you have to go to war with yourself to get yourself to a point where these things become easy. You just have to. Because I knew that when I took my shahada again from the Masaz al-Khan talk, Deceptions of Shaitan, I knew that after that, Shaitan was going to come with all sorts of tests. Like, for example, I had an 8 all day. When I was at that community day in Lewisham Islamic Centre, I had an 8 because I was so engrossed in discussion. So I said, when I get back to my stepmom's, I'm sure it's going to be pork on the plate. I'm not saying I know the vape, by the way, I'm really not saying this, but these are just, you know, things that I thought would be the case, and they were the case. Pork on the plate. What am I going to do? Am I hungry? You know, I think Islam is the truth. Am I going to go and eat the pork? No, I'm just going to let it go. I know that a girl's going to message me from out of the blue randomly, can I come over? I'm chilling by myself alone. What do I get? A text message, oh, can I come over? Then I entertained the discussion for a period of time. And I'm saying to myself, Jibreel, you're playing with fire here, but I'm entertaining discussion a little bit. And then I get to the point where I remember a hadith about the 10 under the shade of Allah. One who's offered the chance to commit zina. I think the woman has to be of a certain status though, and she was certainly not of that kind of status. But you have to be of a certain status and you say, I fear Allah. This time I'm new to Islam, Isaiah is there. Do you know what I wrote back in capital letters? I fear Allah in the text message, subhanAllah, because I thought I want to be under Allah's shade.
May Allah give him shade on the Qiyamah.
I mean, alhamdulillah. But I knew that I had to, even though I was maybe to an extent lonely or might have enjoyed our company, I knew that if I make that decision and I don't give up on certain things now, then I'm always going to compromise. And I'm always going to be shaky. So you have to really, when you start Islam, you have to make sure you're shadeed on yourself, you're very strong and firm. And alhamdulillah, this is it. Barakallahu feek.
The brother's question was, he asked, when people, you know, accept Islam, so sometimes the Islamic community doesn't fully embrace them, or perhaps maybe there's a culture difference because of maybe their nationality, etc. Some of the masajid can be very much one kind of nationality based. So how do we challenge that, and what steps did me and my brother take in order to you know, integrate into the Muslim community? And like my brother said, you know, a masjid which has many different nationalities of people is the most Islamic masjid you'll ever find, because the deen is for every human being from every different nationality. And yes, we should be warm towards one another. We should observe the character of the Messenger of Allah in that greeting those you know and those you don't know. At the same time, there's a responsibility upon the revert, upon the Muslim, to force himself to integrate. You know, sometimes when people accept Islam, they keep the same jahil friends. And this is a big problem. When people accept Islam, they keep the same group of friends. So, one, they're not gaining their Islamic Muslim friends. Two, they're harming themselves because they're remaining with people that aren't encouraging them to pray, they're not encouraging them to learn, and so they just end up dragging them down and they end up drifting. So, the Muslim has to take responsibility for himself. The community has to be warm towards one another, greet one another, And yeah, like my brother said, we were very fortunate enough to have a masjid which is very revert orientated, a large mix of nationalities, and I would actually consider myself quite antisocial in some senses, but I was committed to the masjid, so I was in the masjid often, and in that I got to meet lots of different brothers. And being a revert, actually, they love us, you know, they love to see reverts in the masjid, and they love to approach you and talk to you. Wallahi, you know, a lot of people say, you know, you reverts, like, you know, you're so much better than us. SubhanAllah. That's so not true. That's so not true. Every single Muslim made a choice. Every Muslim made a choice. How many people do we know who are daughters or sons of a scholar and they're off the deen? How many brothers and sisters do we know who are raised in Islamic households but they're not practicing Muslims? Because they made a choice. They made a choice. So each and every single one of us chooses to worship Allah. Yeah, the revert is no better than the born Muslim. As a matter of fact, actually, I think about like your days in secondary school, where the options of halal are maybe limited. Or like there's that nice looking girl that you think is like not really attractive, but you're a Muslim, so you know the hellfire. You've got that torment of having to challenge your nafs. Even if you fell into something, but you still had that torment, that emotional trauma of that inner conflicts that you face. We didn't have that. We didn't have that. So you might have been struggling from the beginning. You guys had Ramadan at like 12, 11 years old. You know, so subhanAllah, like we look up to you just like you look up to us. You know, we're all equal, and yeah, that's it.
Obviously, your mum gave you dawah, but you didn't realise what. How did she feel when you became Muslim?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, again, alhamdulillah, we come from, we have a supportive family. I did have my challenges. Some of them I brought upon myself. You know, when you come into the deen, you're certain it's the haqq, you're certain it's the truth. You want to call the people to it, and sometimes you call the people to it with a lot of zeal, a lot of energy. And sometimes you have to use wisdom. You have to be patient. So, sometimes we bring it on ourselves. Sometimes we don't engage and discuss Islam with people in the manner and the etiquettes that we're supposed to discuss Islam with them. Sometimes we just like to argue. We like to show off how much knowledge we have. We have no intention of even believing this guy is going to accept Islam through what I teach him. No, it's just a matter just to show off what little we know. So, alhamdulillah, my mum's always been really supportive of me. My dad, well, my dad's my dad. He's an interesting character. There should be a film on him. Wallahi, he would win a BAFTA or something, definitely. He's a funny guy, man.
Oh, mum was good though, right?
Yeah, mum was good. She like even the other day, yeah, I had to cut me off, man.
Nah, but she actually took her shahada, you know. She did. It's a sensitive topic. I think that's maybe why I didn't say it, because there's nothing great in taking your shahada and having no amal, having no actions to go with it. But she did take her shahada actually. She took her shahada the same night my wife took her shahada. And I married my wife the same night, alhamdulillah. But my mum did take her shahada, but unfortunately, maybe due to our own shortcomings in how our expectation levels and how we gave dawah, maybe that affected it, or just her being an older woman and struggling to implement some of these changes in lifestyle was maybe a bit too much for her. I remember her saying, you know, talking about giving dawah with wisdom, she was saying that she was upstairs in the sisters section and some sisters told her about the nail varnish, that she's got to take it off, you know, because of her wudu and that. So, you know, it's there's no wudu, there's no salah. So I understand maybe, you know, it's important to mention these things, but we have to be sensitive and we have to be smart when we're giving dawah to people. But inshallah, my mum returns back to the deen. Alhamdulillah, I think she loves Islam, really. She does, but she just lacks some understanding.
Slowly, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Jazakallah khair.